Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Property Perspectives. Now, today I've got with me Wendy Whittaker-Large. Now, Wendy is a very, very experienced property investor with a lot of experience in HMOs. But the reason she's here today is that Wendy is part of a group called the HMO Council Tax Reform Group, and they're fighting disaggregation in the HMO sector. Now that sounds really, really impressive, Wendy. But so can we start off by talking about this thing called disaggregation? What is it? Where is it happening? And who's the body that's driving this?
Well, thank you very much, Neil, for having me on. I appreciate your question. I think that's the first time I've actually ever been asked that specific question about disaggregation. So you've launched in with a technical challenge. So disaggregation is the way that is the method by which the Valuation Office Agency for England and Wales, who are responsible for putting residential properties into the correct band for council tax, they might take a large property. Let's say you've got a property where maybe there's a shop, there might be some uppers, there might be a back store, there might be another property on that title. So on a title, you might have 3 or 4 different buildings, let's say, or
Right.
different sort of sectors, you know, and they might all have operated in different industries. So you might have had a commercial shop, you might have had an industrial unit, you might have had a residential flat. And then a developer comes along and goes, I know, I'm going to develop this all as residential. Now, at that point, some of those units would have probably been in the business ratings section. You know, they would have been rated for business rates. So the Valuation Office comes along and goes, right, what value would we place on this building? What value do we place on that building? And depending on what the value would have been in 1992, because they trace it right back to 1992 when council tax was first created,
Right.
That's the point that they band it. So if it's a small building that would have been worth about, say, £40,000 in 1992, £40,000 or less, they will band it as band A. Now, with HMOs, what's been happening is that they've been taking an HMO, which might have 5, 6 or 7 bedrooms, and doing the same, what we call salami exercise, where they're chopping it up. They're chopping it up into constituent pieces. And that is what disaggregation is in the HMO sector, where they have a whole house and they're separating it out and saying, okay, room 1, we're now going to give you a band A council tax bill. Room 2 is also going to have a council tax bill. So then each room in that HMO is subject to a council tax bill, where previously it would have been the whole property with all its constituent parts seen as a whole that would have been liable for council tax.
So is there a particular type of HMO which is being targeted by the Valuation Office?
No, this is one of the problems. Is it's happening across the board. It's happening in all parts of England. We haven't seen it happen in Wales. I haven't heard of any cases in Wales, but in England it's happening up and down, north, south, east, west. It's happening from HMOs as small as 4 bedrooms right up to mega HMOs with 20 or 30 bedrooms. It's happening with bedrooms that do not have en suites or cooking facilities. It's happening with bedrooms that do have en suites, and in some cases maybe, you know, kettle and a microwave. So we're seeing it across the board happening, and there is very little rhyme or reason as to how the Valuation Office Agency are targeting specific properties and disaggregating them for council tax purposes.
So, but with these things like council tax, isn't council tax related to, you know, something that we call a dwelling, you know, something that is, you know, a self-contained unit with, you know, with a kitchen, with a bathroom? But I mean, a lot of HMOs don't fit in that area.
No, an HMO, as you rightly say, actually is dependent upon sharing facilities. That's how we define an HMO, isn't it? You might have your own bedroom and it might have an ensuite, but actually it's 3 or more unrelated people living together and sharing some facilities, whether that's a bathroom or a kitchen or both. And so you're absolutely right. These rooms are not self-contained, but the Valuation Office Agency are conveniently sidestepping that argument. And instead, they're using an argument of what they call rateable occupation. Now, rateable occupation arose, the test for rateable occupation actually arose from a business rates case from a few years ago, whereby somebody was, it was an industrial unit that a man was renting, but renting rather sporadically. And the local council wanted to impose business rates on this particular building. And he said, well, no, I only use it from time to time. You know, I don't want to pay business rates for a building that I only use from time to time. It's a friend of mine's building. And, you know, I don't see why I should pay business rates when I just occasionally store a few bits and pieces there. And they said, okay, well, they challenged this at the High Court. And the 4 tests of rateable occupation were, if you like, created as a result, and they were kind of codified. And these 4 tests were actual, so you're actually occupying the building, because obviously in the case of this particular individual, he wasn't always actually occupying the building. Beneficial occupation, in other words, you benefit in some way from occupying the building. Not too transient, so it can't be just for a day or two, it needs to be sort of longer. And the 4th one is it's actual, beneficial, not too transient. And there's a 4th one as well, which has just escaped me. That's embarrassing, isn't it? There's a 4th test, which I'll probably remember in a few minutes and come back to. Now, these 4 tests of rateable occupation originally applied to this particular case where business rates were being debated. But actually, the Valuation Office Agency has lifted those, and they now are using them to apply to residential buildings. So let's take the case of, let's say, a granny annex, where maybe you have a house and you've done an extension on the side of your house, maybe converted a garage or so on, because an elderly relative is not capable of looking after themselves, but they don't want to go into a care home. You and the family decide, actually, we'll take in Great Aunt Maud, she can come and live with us. We'll convert the garage and perhaps add a little bathroom, but she can eat her meals with us. So she can come and eat with us, but she has a little lounge and a bedroom and a little bathroom. And these sort of granny annexes are very common up and down the country. Well, the Valuation Office Agency would class that as an additional dwelling, even though it does not have self-contained facilities. It doesn't have a kitchen, for example. So many houses up and down the country are therefore paying an extra council tax, although they would get a discount because that would be an individual, an older individual who's single. So they get a discount on that, but nevertheless, that is counted as a dwelling. So what we've seen happen is that the Valuation Agency have taken this policy and they're now applying it to HMOs. And what they're asking is that the landlord supplies them with the assured short hold tenancy, because the AST is effectively conferring. Oh, I remember the 4th test. The 4th test is exclusivity. I knew it'd come back to me. So in an HMO room, you are actually living there. You do benefit from living there. You might have an AST of 6 months, so that's considered not too transient. And it is exclusive because your room is exclusively for you. Now, if you're meeting those 4 tests, according to the VOA, that confers the status of a dwelling on that room.
Okay, so let's talk about this campaign group then, Wendy. I mean, what's your role in the HMO Council Tax Reform Group?
That's a great question, in between us knees. I started the group myself. I founded it with another landlord based down in Portsmouth, a man called Darren Brewer. We were both, I had a client who I was representing and who had successfully fought the Valuation Office Agency and the local council to, because he had his 6-bed HMO rebanded, all rooms individual, and he was paying the council tax. So we fought this decision, got it overturned, and he had a big refund and he was delighted. Now, this hadn't happened to me in my portfolio, but I was very perturbed because I thought, oh dear, if this is on the cards, if this is on the horizon for HMOs, this is going to really change the landscape of investing in HMOs. So I started to kind of make sounds about this on Facebook and social media and doing some posts about it. And then a friend of a friend said, you need to meet this guy, Darren, because his HMOs have been rebanded down in Portsmouth and he wants to do something about it. So I had a chat with Darren and we had a lot of common interest. We had a lot of commonalities in terms of our desire to change this. And he was already working with the UK's top council tax barrister, a man called Alan Murdy. He had already employed Alan to work on his case. Yeah. So the three of us had a couple of initial meetings and said, we need to form a group. We need to form some kind of campaign group to change this practice with the VOA. So we had 2 or 3 meetings and then started to get some interest from other people. So we've had some other people join the committee since then. We've had people who've got very big portfolios, other people who've been affected by the issue. And so we now have a committee of, I think there's 7 of us, and most of us are landlords, but we have a couple of people on there who are specialists. They're special advisors in one way or another. They've either got great IT skills or they, like Alan has got the legal knowledge. Mm-hmm. So together this year we've been, campaigning to get this change so that the Valuation Office Agency cannot reband a room in an HMO where there are no self-contained, or where the room is not self-contained.
Okay, and I understand that you've involved a member of Parliament in this as well.
So we've had Penny Mordaunt, who is the MP for Portsmouth North, and also Caroline Dinage, who is the MP for Gosport, both very active. They are the MPs for Darren's area, and because he's been affected, he's been really lobbying them. I think that they probably had to block him from WhatsApp, actually. But he's been very, very effective at getting them on board, and they've both been incredibly supportive of our campaign. And as a result, last week, Caroline entered an amendment to the Levelling Up Bill. And the amendment to the Levelling Up Bill is an amendment that Alan Murdy has written. So we know it is legally sound and it would work in terms of legislation. And the amendment states that an HMO room can't be rebanded individually for council tax if it doesn't contain the 4 elements of self-containment, which is eating, sleeping, cooking and washing. It has to have all 4 to be able to be rebanded. And both of those MPs were very, very supportive. Because Penny Mordaunt is a minister, she can't actually sponsor an amendment. She's not allowed to do that. But Caroline, as a backbencher, can do that. Now, we had 19 other MPs who also sponsored the amendment. They were backing the amendment, but it still wasn't quite enough for us to get it written in and debated. However, there was some very good news, because the day before this was due to be heard in the Commons, Caroline spoke to Michael Gove, who is the Secretary of State for Housing, Levelling Up. And he wrote her a letter. And in the letter, he made it very clear that, number one, the department are going to carry out a consultation on this matter in January. So there will be a consultation launched in January from the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Local Communities on this matter about HMOs and single room banding. But secondly, in the letter, he made it explicit that unless exceptional circumstances apply, an HMO should be treated as a single dwelling. And we have that in writing from the Secretary of State.
Right.
So
excellent.
That is a very positive sign that the direction of travel is going our way.
And that letter, that wording in the letter, does that sort of put any kind of stop on what the valuation authorities are doing? So
that's a really good question. One of the things that we felt should be an impact of that particular letter is, as you say, that if I was working for the VOA right now, if I was the head of the VOA, I would be very cautious about any possible rebanding of HMOs that I was doing right now, because it's likely to be overturned in January. And so therefore, I would hope that they will start to pause their process. And anybody out there who's got HMOs that are in the process of being rebanded, you need to get a copy of the letter and send it to the VOA, send it to your listings officer, and actually say, hang on a minute, look what the Secretary of State is saying. There's going to be a consultation on this in January. And if if it gets overturned, then you're going to have to overturn this rebanding. So could we just pause it there, please? And I think they would have a very good argument to make the VOA stop. Yes.
Oh, that sounds really good. And I mean, how might they get hold of a copy of that letter?
Well, if you go onto our Facebook page, so we are, if you do facebook.com/HMOCT.
So Facebook.
I think it's facebook.com/HMOCT.
CT, right? Yeah.
Okay, so it stands for HMOs and council tax, but it's very long-winded, so we just shortened it, HMOCT. And you'll come across our group, and in the group we have got files, we have got videos, we've got lots of information, got lots of advice for people. You know, we try and really help people who are going through this and want to know what the steps are to be able to address this problem. And if people would like to come on our monthly webinars, which are exclusive, and they're for people who have donated to our cause, all we ask is for a £99 donation. And you can make that by going via our website, which is hmosandcounciltax.co.uk.
HMOs and ampersand or AND?
AND.
HMOs
and counciltax.co.uk. And
.co.uk, right?
That's right. And on the website, we have a link to our GoFundMe page, and you can make a donation of £99, and then you can come on every month. We run a webinar with Alan Murdy, the barrister, who will answer your individual questions. So it's a much cheaper way than usual for getting some individual legal advice that you wouldn't normally be able to access at that kind of value.
And is there anything else that people can do to support you with this?
So we're asking that people make their MP aware of it. Before last week, we had a flurry of activity from our supporters and from the group, which was very exciting. And lots of MPs received letters from their constituents to say, I'm an HMO landlord and, you know, this is wrong and we need this to change. But I don't want the energy and the momentum to drop, because in January we're going to be having the second stage of this, which is the consultation. So I still would encourage people to write to their MP. Now that we have got the consultation going ahead, we need to press forward so that those MPs start to recognise what's happening, and they themselves will potentially then have a vote later in the spring. And we also need to make people aware of the consultation. Mm-hmm. Now, that hasn't been launched yet. We haven't seen the wording of that, but once that goes ahead, that will obviously be on our group. We will be cross-posting, promoting it. And if anybody runs a Facebook group that's related to property or knows HMO landlords or is involved in any kind of HMO landlord group, you know, we would love them to also actively promote that consultation and to hear the voice of the landlord.
Yeah, we will do that. I mean, as soon as you know what the link is for the consultation, then let us know, and then we'll post it within the Property Tax 360 group as well.
Thank you. Right,
so you've been very, very busy. So
absolutely, it's been a very busy year, and the last few months particularly, you know, we've been to we went to the Conservative Party conference, we've been to the NRLA national conference, we've been to the Landlord Investment Show, I've been speaking at a number of events up and down the country. Matt Baker, who's another HMO landlord, he's also been speaking at various different events. He's on our committee. Darren has also been very active. We managed to speak to Paul Lewis from Moneybox at the NRLA conference, and Darren is potentially lined up for an interview on Moneybox. It was due to happen last week, but it didn't happen because they had another story they were going to cover. And we also know that the Today programme are interested, so keep your eyes peeled. We might be on that anytime soon. So we're getting in the media now as well. I think since it went to the House of Commons and there was an announcement there about the consultation, I think that has certainly piqued the interest of people, because now they can see this is going to become a reality. Now, we don't know what the outcome will be, so that is the next battle we have to fight. But I do certainly feel that, you know, we made a lot of progress in the last few months, which is really exciting.
That sounds really good, Wendy, and it's and I think it's something that all HMO landlords need to be aware of. I mean, they may not be impacted today, but it could be tomorrow.
Exactly.
But
There is no rhyme nor reason as to how the valuation office agency might discover your HMO, and suddenly you've gone from paying, let's say, a band B council tax on the whole property, and now all your rooms have a council tax bill. Now, legally, you can pass that bill on to your tenants because there is something called the hierarchy of liability, which means that when a property, a dwelling, is now banded for council tax, you can pass that bill on to the person who lives there. So the tenant is then
becomes
nominally
liable.
responsible. Exactly. However, of course, the issue is that for a lot of tenants, they're already on minimum wage or lower wages. They can afford their rent, but can they afford an extra bill of maybe £80 to £100 a month for council tax, which they didn't ever assume was going to be part of it. They assumed it was going to be all inclusive. So you have tension between tenant and landlord. You've now got tension between landlord and council. And of course, when those rooms are empty, the landlord is responsible for the council tax.
Still got to pay the council tax.
So it's an admin nightmare for a lot of landlords who now have to pay the council tax. And that is another reason why we want to make this go away. Now, some people would say, hang on a minute though, Wendy, if you've got a house where you've got 6 adults living there and it's let's say, band B council tax, surely those adults are paying a disproportionately small amount to the services that they're using. Now, I would say to that, I think that's true. And of course, Maggie, in her wisdom, decided to address that with the introduction of the poll tax. And the poll tax was exactly that, which was a people tax that was supposed to allow individuals to be personally liable for the costs that their local council would incur on their behalf, running the libraries, the leisure centres, the roads, the street lighting, etc. But it was so unpalatable, and the UK population resisted it so strongly, they had to massively backtrack. And in its place, we got council tax, which is a property tax rather than a person tax. So I think there is an argument here, and one of our, if you like, compromises on this is whether there needs to be some kind of maybe additional plus banding if you have an HMO. Therefore, you might be a B plus, so you might pay another 10% per annum or 20% per annum because you have a higher concentration of people living in a property, and they will therefore use more bins. They will, all the services that are provided from the local council are being utilised more heavily by a group of 6 adults rather than 2 adults who might live in a next door neighbouring property. So we understand that as a concern, and that will have to be addressed further down the line. But as it is, the issue is that it's being applied completely indiscriminately and without any consistency. So I could have an HMO at number 2 the Avenue, and it's got 6 bedrooms, and I'm a band A. You could have an HMO at number 8 the Avenue, it's got 6 bedrooms, and you've had them all rebanded. That to me is an unequal application of the law.
And there's no particular type of HMO, there's no particular timing as to when that was made an HMO that the VOA are targeting. Well,
there was a significant change in 2017 when the VOA were given a lot more license, if you like, to be flexible. Now that meant, it was supposed to really mean that they would be more flexible about not disaggregating HMOs. But in fact, what it meant was that they became more stringent about disaggregating HMOs. So since 2017, we've seen a lot more listings officers saying, we're going to reband your property because they've got the power to do that. We also noticed that the triggers often are when a property moves from commercial to residential. So in the case of going from business rates to council tax, because it suddenly becomes on the VOA's agenda. We've also seen where the council has got some other kind of involvement with the property, whether it be planning or building regs, that can sometimes trigger a rebanding. But The truth is, Neil, there doesn't seem to be any rhyme nor reason on this. It's happening in some areas more than others, but yet I get phone calls every day from people saying, "Oh, my HMO's just been rebanded. What do I do?" So it's happening all over. It's called discretion. The licensing officer from the VOA was given discretion, and unfortunately, my view is they've used that discretion wrongly. They're misapplying.
Inconsistently.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
That's really interesting, Wendy, and I think that's this information I think is really, really important to get out to the HMO landlords that we have in our group and nationally as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, thank you for your time and thank you for all of that information. What I will do, Wendy, is I'll put all of the links that are in the video that you've mentioned into the comments below when we publish this within the group.
Great.
So that will work. And I think if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask Wendy about this process, then again, are you happy for us to share your email address so that people can contact you?
That's fine. Absolutely. No problem at all, Neil.
So
Thank you.
We'll do that as well. So thank you, Wendy. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this interview on Property Perspectives. And we'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.